Okay, there we go. So, you guys have been doing this podcast for a little bit.
Yeah, nearly 3 years now.
That's yeah, I'm almost 3 years as well. So, uh,
Yeah, we have a small following of the most based people in the world. We're a blue collar right wing gun nut uh, enjoyer podcast. That's what we are.
well, my audience tends to be American veterans for the most
Right.
part, and yeah, we love guns too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a veteran, but I do have three kids serving in the imperial military.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Well,
That's
I'm not too pleased about it. I'm homeschooling the latest one because I want one of them to have a chance of not being a veteran. Yeah. Because
you
like
guys.
they've got the kids trapped. My eldest boy like went into the army at 16. He's now 30,
Okay.
and he's like, you know, he's doing great, but it's like a 16-year-old kid like him, right? He got admitted, which is quite hard to do. He got admitted into the used to be called the Army Apprentices College. It's now
Hmm.
called Army Foundation College,
Okay.
where they take underage recruits who have got like an aptitude for engineering, mechanical type stuff, but aren't academic
Hmm.
because they used to lose. They're the best. They're the guys they really want, and they used to lose them all because they'd get a job in while they were waiting to be 18 because they couldn't stand being at school. And so he went into that, and it kind of broke him like a Mustang, like he was like a wild Mustang of a kid. He was trouble. And now he's about to be a sergeant. He's an instructor at the same college. So like, but the point is, at age 16, he was earning more money than I was
Hmm.
because they pay him a lot to go. They select like 1,200 boys a year to go into that, and
Okay.
they pay him a grown man's wage. So it's like for the guys that they want, it's a no-brainer. You've got to do it. But anyway, I got two grandkids off him, and he's
You
doing well.
guys seem to do a better job at taking care of your veterans. At least it seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Probably, yeah, because there's like a. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big jingoist. I'm very patriotic for England and my people, but I don't
Mm.
really like them, if you know what I mean. Like it's, and I blame. There's the whole thing about when you're English, wherever you go in the world, people have got a grudge against you because of what your government did. Okay, I mean it doesn't matter if it's America, India, anywhere in Europe, whatever, right?
I
But what people need to remember is, however much the British government has done to you and your people, they've been doing it to us since way before then, and they're still doing it.
I laugh because when I was overseas, I spent a lot of time with UK. Actually, most with the UK Navy. Did with the
Oh,
Army as well. Um, and I noticed that we tend to get along.
yeah, yeah, sure.
UK Americans, everything's like we'll poke fun of each other, but we get along. And then, but and I expected when I went overseas people to not like me, and
Yeah,
everyone was like, "Where's your accent from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from America," and they were like, "Oh, okay, that's awesome." I was like, "Do you have a problem with America?" I'm just curious. They're like, "No, you guys are always pretty polite." And the one group that I found that we tend to love that no
yeah.
one else does is the Australians.
Well,
Like,
yeah. Yeah,
Australian New Zealanders we seem to love, and everyone else is like, all they do is drink and swear and cause a problem.
yeah, mate. We, so the English have a love-hate relationship with Australians, and it's just kind of a gay love relationship with Kiwis. But Australians are kind of yeah. We pretend we don't like each other, but we secretly do. We have sporting rivalries with Australia, and but those are like kind of the really kind of bonding things.
Mhm.
I don't know how it is with sports. Like football in England is stupid. Like people fucking hate each other because of it. But like with the cricket and rugby and stuff like what we play against Australia, it's different. Um, it's like a bonding experience where you grow to love your opposition. It's kind of cricket is the first tool of multiculturalism. Like it gets English people to like Indians and Australians. Like, nothing else could do that.
I was not prepared for how much Indians like cricket. Like
Yeah,
they,
dude.
it's a religion for them.
It's for me. I'm from Yorkshire in England. It's also a religion here. Right? Like there's big cities in Yorkshire that don't even have a soccer team. They have a rugby league team and cricket, and they don't give a fuck about football. If they want to support a football team, they have to support Leeds because it's like the
Like the next one over.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, with
But this is the
Americans.
thing about. Sorry, we get into like colonialism, which is, I mean,
Oh yeah.
cricket is the ultimate colonial sport, and so it was designed to spread Enlightenment ideals throughout the empire, and it does so, and that's why it's so much fun to watch. That's why Indians like it. I mean, Indians are Aryans; they're like the original. Not to be racist or anything, but like Indians are the and Iranians are the original Aryans.
Hmm.
So, like, not that they have anything to do with the Enlightenment. That's to do with. I mean, I credit it to Jesus Christ and I don't know Francis Bacon, you name it. But like these these ideas play well with those people,
Hmm.
and that's why cricket goes. Obviously, the same ideas played well with the American colonists because they were the first people to revolt against the sort of destruction of the Enlightenment ideas. I
Hmm.
mean, that's what the
Oh,
American Revolution
absolutely.
was about, upholding the English Constitution. They were protesting against breaches of the unwritten English Constitution, of like Parliament's not allowed to do anything it hasn't done before. That's the root of it.
Hmm.
So, like, England has this great tradition of liberalism in the good sense and freedom, but it's just pissed it all away.
Yeah,
And the only thing that's left is cricket.
it's no, what you're saying is absolutely true, and it's very interesting because you look at the American Revolution, we break away, but then almost within 20 years, the British Empire then outlaws slavery, which was huge because at
Yeah.
that point it was a growing, it was still a growing uh, I, empire, and to do that when other empires were completely based off of solely slavery. It was incredibly based off Enlightenment ideals. Um, so yeah,
But
there's.
it's also very convenient that their biggest. I mean, like, I am a fan of the British Empire in that I wish, if I'd have been born 100 years earlier in 1870 instead of 1970, I could have gone off and run a railway in Burma or something
Mhm.
and had a nice life, right? But what they did was they took this empire and this Cecil Rhodes character came along in the 1890s and decided, you know, it'd be much better if the whole world, the British Empire is so great, and it was pretty good
Mhm.
in its
Oh
own
yeah.
terms, but like, yeah, it fucked people over. That's what empires do. But it there was at least a veneer of wanting to spread these Enlightenment principles.
There's a
But
reason why empires expand, and
yeah,
much. I always go back to the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire was like reluctant expansion. It kept expanding simply because people they could see the safety of the Roman Empire and were like, "Hey,
yeah,
uh, we have this neighbor who's attacking us. We'll become a part of the empire. You move here and defend
yeah,
us." And then next thing you know,
protectorate.
the Romans are then going to war against those neighbors because now these people are part of the Roman Empire, and that's how it just kind of evolved. And the as bad as even the Roman Empire had some incredibly bad characteristics, it's still the fundamentals of the Enlightenment. We reach
Yeah.
back all the way to the
Well, I mean,
the Greco-Romans.
yeah, kind of. I mean, the guys who invented the Enlightenment certainly thought that, didn't they? They were big, like Greco-Roman enjoyers, as we say on the internet. But I'm not so sure about. I mean, like it was still pretty savage,
Oh yeah.
and also, I mean, the British Empire had its element of savagery,
Hmm.
but at least this is the difference between then and now. Because my contention, the contention of my show, which is History Homos, guys, hello, uh, is that the British Empire didn't, well, it did decline, that's undeniable, but it didn't go away.
Hmm.
It co-opted America. And like one of the points on this is, if you notice, South American countries didn't get involved in either of the world wars. They never get involved in any European bullshit whatsoever. Even this Lola character, who's fake news, and whatever, he's not getting involved in Ukraine. Why is that? It's because they've stayed true to their like New World Republican
Hmm.
ideals way more than the United States has. And why has the United States fallen back on this kind of European imperialist model? It's
Hmm.
because of British infiltration. That like so the ideals behind the US Constitution are amazing. I'm a big US Constitution enjoyer,
Hmm.
but as you say, it took them like 20 years to absolutely destroy it. It lasted no time, and it's because the British were like you've got these shadowy, buck-toothed, chinless English bastards just getting involved at every stage. It's diplomacy, the great game. It all stinks, dude. And that's what we're all like. My kids and your audience, have to go out and get fucking shot at
Hmm.
to for what? Like they don't even. You can't even get a job running a railway station in Afghanistan or Iran or fucking Yemen or wherever it is that you're fucking over this week. Whereas, like in the old days, you could. You could go and run the post office in fucking Bangalore, and you'd be laughing. You'd have a nice big house, wear a white linen suit and a Panama hat, drink pink gin in a courtyard, and that's your life. But what's your life now? It's get pensioned off, struggle to get medical care, fucking come home, and like meanwhile, your wife is working overtime. Your kid has to go to a government school, so your wife can work overtime in the ammunition factory to make bombs for the war that's being the banks to pay the mortgage on your house that the bank that's mortgaged your house is financing both sides of the fucking war. It's insane, dude.
And for like the people that watch our show, just to for those who would say that who disagree with you, I want to point out that when it comes to American classifications of like documents and stuff like that, which right now is all in the news.
Yeah.
We have a special thing that we call Five Eyes, and that's the
Yeah.
countries of U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and oh no, Australia, New Zealand. Those are the other two. So those five countries, like it's almost it, it's just below the top tier where we can share amongst all those countries without ever having to go and get approval for anything. It can be like, hey, yeah, this is American top secret information, could do major damage to us, but we can show it to you guys without any question. That's like, there's,
Yeah.
and that's top secret stuff. It'll be top secret Five Eyes. That's how
But
it's marked.
it's like the inner circle of the
Oh, yeah.
new world government.
And then below that is NATO, and even below that is what they call NATO ISAF. And that was for Iraq and Afghanistan, where we added all these other countries. But it's really, yeah, we're still very close, and we view things a lot alike.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, did you ever see that documentary that Oliver Stone made, where he just did loads of interviews with Vladimir Putin?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I don't know if you can still see it on YouTube. You could a couple of years
Okay.
ago. You could still see it. I watched it all, and it's like it's. I mean, obviously, any world leader giving an interview is full of shit, but this guy, what really comes through is that he doesn't hate his own culture, and that's why he's persona non grata in the international community, because like
I've
the
had
difference between
people,
Justin Trudeau and Trailer Park Boys is like it couldn't be anymore.
unlike most Americans, I've traveled the world a couple times, and I've been to Moscow, and
Yeah,
I've had Americans
me too.
like, so like
Yeah,
no one ever successfully invaded, so that you can see all the historical stuff they have there. But I've had Americans try to tell me that it's a communist country, and I'm like, no, no, it's not. Like the Soviet Union fell, it's no
yeah.
longer communist. It's an
No, that's
oligarchy. I'll say that.
yeah, but it's like it isn't. Every country is an oligarchy,
Yeah.
but it's a lot less of an oligarchy than it was before Putin came to power. That was his main. That's why they hate him, because they chucked out all the Harvard, MIT economics professors. I'm not going to say anything about their religion,
They
but you know.
they miss the days of Boris Yeltsin just downing a fifth of vodka.
Well, yeah. The thing is, like, what people don't understand is that, I mean, a lot of people on the sort of dissident right think, yeah, Putin's he's paid for. He's really a globalist. He's a like because I mean, it was only just about a year ago that they got rid of his profile on the World Economic Forum website.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, I'm sure he's had money from all these people, but these people that fund people like that fund both sides and everything. They've
One
funded both.
one quick second. Apologies, my cat wanted in the room, and he's just going to get progressively louder.
That was quick. You're a cat guy, dude. We have so much in common.
I'm, I was never a cat guy. I was always a dog guy, and I got my current dog, who's a service dog, to help me with my PTSD. But my dog was alone,
Yeah.
and there were days where when we're here and the dog's not working, the dog gets bored. So I ended up, I was going to get another cat or a dog, and I decided on a kitten, and they're best friends. And
I think that was a good call, dude.
I didn't want a dog that had to stay at home while I take my service dog out. So that was kind of like the big driver. But I did want to get a cat that was used to being around dogs. So yeah, here he is.
Oh, he's a tabby with
Yeah,
a very long tail.
he uh, he makes appearances on my show. I call him on the show. I call him Conspiracy Kitty, uh,
Yeah.
because yeah, he seems we would talk about conspiracy theories is when he would just kind of make his appearance.
Yeah,
Uh,
he could just detect that my eyes were glowing red with the power of the conspiracy theory. But I don't know I was spaffing off about Putin, wasn't I?
yeah,
When conspiracy getting interrupted. Hello, conspiracy kitty.
yeah.
Let
He
me tell
hears
you
people
about
talk about Russia, Ukraine, and Putin, and
yeah
he's like, "Oh, here, let me jump in."
yeah. But so in the 90s, they sent all these American economists into Russia, and they totally fucking they they totally tried to succeeded in destroying the economy. And like Putin's record speaks for itself. He just like no, we can't put up with this shit. We're not going to
Mhm.
live like this. Russia is not going to be destroyed,
Yeah,
and he was right to do that. But ultimately, he offended the people who fund both sides of everything
Uh,
because he paid off the national debt, he, which is the ultimate sin. You know, like the other historical figure who did that was Mrs. Thatcher. Look what happened to her. She got fucked over within a couple of years of that happening. You're paying off the national debt? You fucking anti, you know what, ite. You know, like, it's so really, I mean, Russia exists. People have to accept that. I don't think it means anybody any harm. I don't
and
think it ever did.
it'll always be. Russia has a long history of Asiatic, almost dictators, all the way back to when the Khans took
Yeah.
over. But
Have you read that book about Genghis Khan? Shit, I can't remember what it's called, but
so I okay, so I studied obviously in school about Genghis Khan, and but what really when I started studying more was when I went to Afghanistan. I did a lot of studying in
right.
the you know our run up to it, and oh yeah, definitely showed me where American even colleges are lacking in terms of world history because very briefly talked about Tamerlane and people like that, and very quickly I realized, oh, this was not. We gloss over this history, but this is like huge,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when you're talking about Russian history. So
Well, there's an argument that um, Genghis Khan invented the modern world,
yeah,
and he was just like an orphan who was just out in the middle of the steppe. It was
yeah,
insane. But this this is another massive global cultural thing that people never think about is that Asia didn't have an enlightenment. Okay,
yes,
and the reason it didn't have an enlightenment was because it never had an endarkenment.
hmm
And like it was the Genghis Khan thing, really. And you have to ask yourself, why isn't this more part of like people's consciousness in the West? Why don't we know more? People heard of Genghis Khan, but they just think, oh, he's a bit like Attila the Hun, or so. He's just like this brutal dude, which is totally the opposite of what he really was. He was kind of like a he. I mean, I hope this doesn't get you banned from YouTube. That I think I'm talking about a different tribe, but he basically financialized the world, the known world, from his point of view,
hmm
in order for the sole benefit of his tribe, who produced nothing. And in the process of doing so, he made the rest of the world much more wealthy and better educated and everything else as well. He invented free trade basically. He
yeah.
was he was
He
based, dude.
he was the first world leader that didn't, if he took over an area, didn't necessarily uh, kill the people there because they were a different religion or spoke a different language. He was
Yeah,
perfectly willing to allow them to be in charge as long as they acknowledged him as the leader, gave up soldiers, and paid tribute.
yeah. Uh, by the way, we on our show we did an episode about. Oh God, I haven't got my phone silent. Mike probably didn't pick that up though. So he, we did an episode on our show, History Homos, which is
Mhm.
rockfin.com/historyhomos. Uh, we did an episode on that show about the. It's a kind of a book, not really a book. It's a series of lectures by Thomas Carlyle called "On uh, Great Men" or something like that. Anyway, it's about on heroes and hero worship,
Mhm.
and it's about great men, and it's really interesting, and it's a totally like it's kind of like the height of Enlightenment thinking of. So he goes back to various religious figures
Mhm.
throughout time, from the guy who basically invented Norse paganism to through like Muhammad, Martin Luther, whatever. These these dudes, and he's making the argument that yeah, there's only one God, and these guys weren't quacks and they weren't fakes. They were just expressing it to the best of their ability at that time,
Mhm.
most of which was before Christ. Okay, so but there's one guy who did that, not before the Norse gods guy, obviously, but before Martin Luther, before Muhammad, before all these other guys. One of my favorite parts about this Carlislean thing is how pro Muhammad it is, because like he's saying, obviously he's Christian, hardcore Christian, and he's like, what you got to understand about Muhammad is that Islam, wherever it's been in the world, when it's displaced other religions, it's only ever displaced religions that were worse than it. You get it? Like it, I think he actually literally says this was the closest thing to Christianity that he could get the Arabs to swallow. It's like so that outlook, and Genghis Khan had that exact peak of the Enlightenment, like
Mhm.
late 19th century Thomas Carlyle outlook. He had that in the 12th century, dude.
Mhm.
The exact same. Yeah, we all have the same. You guys have your Hindus, your Muslims, your whatever. Yeah, but we're all the same. We're, it's there is only one God, so it doesn't matter how you perceive it. It's just the same God. That's that guy was based, dude. He was the ultimate Enlightenment thinker, and he happened like 1,000 years before the Enlightenment happened.
And when especially when you look at people of those that time and also those who immediately followed them, of course I'm thinking of people like Ivan the Terrible, Vlad the Impaler. They used war as a means of it wasn't just to gain something, it was also to control your enemy, like make it so
Yeah,
brutal to where they don't want to have to fight,
those are
type
like
of thing.
ideological wars, whereas
Yeah.
Genghis Khan didn't have ideological wars. He was literally just cold. I want my I want nice manufactured goods from South China
Hmm.
to get to my people in the Mongolian steppe.
Hmm.
That was it. That was all he cared about. And as far as religion went, this is how this is what really gets me about him. He's so base. He's like, yeah, whatever you say your God is, it's the same God as my God. My God is the great blue sky. It's the same God,
Hmm.
and I totally believe that. I'm totally pro Chengis on that. I think
Yeah, it's funny because yeah, people, especially those who don't look at history, um, they misinterpret so much,
Yeah.
and like just but without regard to the consequences that it can have. You know, we've always said history is doomed to repeat itself if
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention, and I believe that to be very true. Um, but yeah,
I mean,
it's
it keeps doing it.
yeah, time and time again, it's proven true.
So
But
this what we're going into now. I call it World War One Part Two, as opposed to World War Three, because it's like it's been started in exactly the same way.
mhm, yeah,
It's the provocations to Germany prior to World War One started basically the minute that Queen Victoria died in 1902. That they had to the the British Foreign Office felt like they had to provoke that war, and they had this monarch in Edward VII who was basically the exact analog of this Charles dickhead that we've got now. It was like but if anything, Edward VII was probably worse. There are allegations against Prince Charles, but it's well documented that Edward VII was a big fat pedophile, uh, unisex rapist.
womanizer, yeah.
Yeah, and he liked the swanking about and having the popular opinion thing, just like this. You know what kind of a tard we've got now? Like, um, he's it's almost. I mean, I'm not saying his mother was a patch on Queen Victoria, but I think she was holding a little bit of stuff, but that people daren't have the bare face to go up to her and say, "Well, this is what we're going to do." And yeah, that dude's evil. He looks, you know what, tarded, and he's like, he is, but he just likes being popular. He's
Mhm.
never had any. You imagine being that guy. He's never had any friends in his life, and it's a sad state of affairs that it matters what a guy like that thinks, but it does.
That
And,
and
and and so here we are.
he's overshadowed by his first wife, who's been dead 30 years almost. Uh, so that's got to be a bit emasculating.
And here you have NATO-backed forces firing landmines via artillery randomly, willy nilly, all over Europe. Let's say a certain country in Europe. And
Yeah,
like, what would Princess Diana think about that? So, but like, I had to suffer through people lining the streets weeping about Princess Diana dying, and now they've all got you know what crane flags like, flying
yeah.
outside the houses, while they're randomly strewing mines all over Eastern Europe. Who cares?
You got
Nobody
me.
really cares about anything. It's all bullshit.
You got me wondering. Does Elton John's Twitter have a? No, he does not have a Ukraine flag. I had to take a look.
Well, Elton John's Chad. That's standard. He's like, that's the least gay thing he's ever done. Apart from Saturday Night is all right for fighting. That's a pretty good song. It's a good tune.
Uh, but yeah. Oh my God, it's the things that are happening. Like there are days where I just have to stop and be like, is everyone else just batshit insane?
Yeah.
Because the stuff, and it's like they're like, well, all this bad stuff's happening, and I'm like, yeah, look what you're doing, look what you're
Yeah.
condoning. Of course,
Yeah.
bad stuff's gonna happen, and I'm not. Here's the thing, I'm not. I'm the type of person I love chaos because I like being interested. So
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily opposed to all the bad stuff happening. I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to be the guy to sit back and just watch y'all act crazy.
I don't know. Have you ever heard of a lady called Monica Perez?
The name does sound familiar.
She's a radio lady from the South who,
Okay.
like, she's now a podcast lady because she got thrown off radio for having red glowing eyes and being super based. She's Tradcath, mother of several. She's ace, and she's our benefactress on our show. And she's a regular guest. And well, she's like based Catholic mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she speaks to uh, this whole idea. Well, I mean, the thing with Monica is she predicted in summer of 2019 the whole COVID thing, how that was going to play
Mm-hmm.
out. By the way, that was what got her sacked from radio. She saying what was going to happen didn't get her sacked, but when it happened, that got her sacked because it's like, oh, shit, this lady's too based. But it's how do you explain what's going on without it being evil? You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
like there has to be some kind of
Well, and with
you've got to
that,
have reference to God, dude.
with that, you talk about history repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the U.S., back in the late 20s, early 30s, we had the Depression, and a lot of people, black and white, fled the South and went up north because that's where the jobs were. And they went to Detroit, Michigan because that was the auto industry and that's where everything was booming. And out of that came this radio personality. His name was Father Coughlin. He was a Catholic priest who he was speaking out against because when all these Southerners moved up, they brought the Ku Klux Klan with them, who were very anti-Catholic, and he got very big speaking out against them, also speaking out against the government. In fact, I think he was the first one to call FDR Franklin Delano Roosevelt. you know, but
Hey,
the other
cool
thing,
it, Bo.
but he was also highly supportive of Germany during that same time and all the things they were doing. And same thing, he actually was the biggest radio personality at the time, and there were people just trying to get him taken off the radio and stuff like that. For
Even back before
Yeah,
Prince Charles was circumcised
but
by a mile.
that's the thing. Censorship has never worked well. Like it
Nah.
never. It always backfires because they'll always make themselves heard in one way or another. Whether it's by force, whether it's by
Well, the run up to that Tiananmen Square
mhm.
brouhaha was under the most lockdown country in the world. People just fly posted slogans. They wrote stuff on a piece of paper and stuck it to the wall.
Mhm.
You can always do that.
Yeah, and
And
that's
yeah, I mean, look, I'm old enough. I'm 52 years old. I've seen it all. I've seen people be terrified that the Arabs are taking over the world because they've got all the money. And I've seen people, I mean, Arabs. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people be terrified that the Japanese are taking over the world. I mean, their economy's fucked, dude. Because, but all the time, in the meantime, I've seen countries, I mean, granted, mainly in the Middle East, but countries get bombed And a lot of them have the same thing in common, and that is that it's illegal to charge money, to charge it interest
Hmm.
on debt. You know, that usury is illegal. You look at a map of the world that highlights the countries that are where usury isn't allowed, and then overlay it with a map of the world that's being bombed by the empire, and it's the same map, dude.
Yeah, that's
And like the Soviet, even the Cold War, the Rockefellers financed the Bolsheviks. They don't. The whole world, everything in the world is the movie Trading Places, right? So people think politics is wrestling, like Democrat versus Republican, America versus Russia, whatever. They think, maybe it's just wrestling. It's not wrestling; it's boxing.
hmm
Because, like, to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the outcome does matter a lot, right? And it's not predetermined. But to the TV company that's showing the boxing match on pay per view, they don't really care who wins. They might have a mild preference one way or the other, but they're making money out of it.
oh yeah.
Whoever wins, as long as people will watch. What we've got to do is stop having respect for governments, and the the only government that your respect matters is your own. You got to stop respecting your own government because it hates you. It you are cattle to your own government, and never mind any outside groups or tribes or whatever. As long as you don't, as long as if nobody in America or England had any respect for the government, everything would be all right.
You know, and that's one thing we talk a lot about corruption on our show. And the one thing, if I can get it out to everybody, it's if you don't like corruption, just then you should don't focus on the individual. Focus
Yeah,
on making transparency a bigger thing. Because
yeah.
it's
Don't
hard to
hate the
be.
player, hate the game.
Yeah, because if you have transparency, it's harder for people to be corrupt because everything's out in the open.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and that's true. But like, why do we really like? Let's say just guys like you. We only just met. I've watched two of your shows because you messaged me, and I thought, oh, it seems like a nice guy. So like, so between you and me,
mhm.
what's stopping? Let's say that we live next door to each other. What's stopping me from stealing your stuff? Is it the fact that if I do it, it'll the police will arrest me? No, it's because I'm I'm like a. I mean, I'm not going to stand on my Christianity because you don't have to be a Christian, but like it's because I'm not a you know what. You know,
Mhm.
like I don't steal things. I would hate to steal anything from anybody. I don't want to do that. Like I don't need the state to stop me stealing things,
Mhm.
right? And if somebody steals something from me, then I mean, absent the state, I can make that an uneconomic proposition for them. It, it's there are different ways of organizing stuff rather than the welfare warfare state. Which, by the way, going back to the like deep history thing, that was only invented. This is the weird thing: how you have these big conflicts, and the victors take on all the bad points of the losers, so that like nationalism in Europe, outside of the Netherlands, France, and England, so Great Britain, didn't exist in Europe. Europe was always like everywhere in Europe was always part of Austro-Hungarian Empire or you
Mhm.
know this empire or that empire. Yeah, but you had France that was a nation state, Britain was a nation state and the Netherlands was a nation state. Everywhere else was always part of one empire or another. And it was after Napoleon tried to unite all that stuff, and that was the high point of British military being on the correct side of things, I believe, because I think like the bigger the political unit, the worse it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everybody naturally hates the idea of a one world government. And basically, that's what Napoleon was about.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Julius Caesar. People admire those guys rightly because of their military prowess and their genius, which they were. But their objects, I don't like their objects. I don't think it's a good idea. Right? Okay. So, like, my escapism is reading like fiction and history about Napoleonic Royal Navy exploits. It was awesome. But
And
so that they had this the Napoleon tried to unite Europe, but what it really needs to happen to Europe is it needs to be exploded into the real nations within Europe, as
mm-hmm.
in the Basque people. They don't have a nation to this day, but they are a nation, and like it's been impossible to snuff that nation out. They still keep blowing shit up. Like the British tried to snuff out the Irish nation. A nation isn't a political structure. It's like I say I'm patriotic. I'm a patriotic Yorkshireman. I love Yorkshire. I don't give a fuck about England. But the smaller the political unit, the better the more just it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have some kind of police force or judiciary or whatever, it's got to be down to the lowest level. You've got to know the guy who's doing it. So that if he starts being a you know what, you can go and burn his house down. Or you can go and you know what his house down.
You're making me think of the Holy Grail. We're an autonomous collective led by a bicameral committee selected.
No, but there are in America there are naturally occurring
Oh yeah.
nations within America, like Appalachian people, West Coast liberals, East Coast liberals. There are city states. City states are like it's weird how when civilization first kind of started getting off the ground, it got it right, and then we've ruined it. And this 19th century nationalism in Europe was consciously stoked by the British because Britain already had a massive empire and already was a nation. Like they promoted Arab nationalism, Zionism, every kind of nationalism in Europe until it didn't suit them. And then when Italy and Germany, because Germany wasn't even a country officially until 1850, and Italy wasn't until 1860. That's why the First World War happened, because it turned out that those two agglomerations of kingdoms that came together to become a nation turned out to have capabilities that enabled them to threaten the dominant empire. They had to be destroyed. And you can argue that the Germany started the First World War until you're blue in the face, to me, but they were provoked into it. There were numerous provocations, just like what's going on now. That's why what's going on now is World War One, Part 2. It's not World War 3. And I think it is going to be a world war. I don't think there's any turning back now. It's gone too far.
it almost seems like there's people on both sides who are just dead set on that being the case.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
The people.
we just found out the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Why?
Well,
It
we
wasn't
always knew that.
strategic for us.
Well, I thought it might have been the British or the Polish, but there's no way it was. Who the fuck would ever have thought it was Russia did it? They'd
Oh
already
yeah,
turned it off.
I wanted to, I would love to meet the intelligence analyst that came up with that and be like, okay, how,
Well, just go hang around in the
explain to me
CNN
how you
newsroom. He'll be
thought
there.
this was a good plan. Like, especially when there's, Russia has been in a state for the last 20 years of recognizing it does not have the natural resources to compete as a superpower without the Soviet Union, like just Russia itself. So it's been in a scramble to get up to the North Pole to do all these things so that it can, have oil, ore, and mineral rights.
Well, I mean, it's got lots of oil of its own, hasn't it? It's just like it's been using the Western powers the Western companies to extract it
Yeah,
because it was more convenient. And then they all left last year, and they went, "Fine, all the guys who were working there are still here. We'll just form a new company and employ them." And oh, look, we've increased our output by 10% since last year. What you do about that, Uncle Sam? Oh, no McDonald's. You remember
that
they had that meme of that fat guy who was like weeping about, God damn it, Putin, there's no McDonald's anymore.
that was one thing I did find weird about being in Russia was seeing like this communist worker statue, like where they're swinging the hammers, and it's right outside of a Starbucks.
Yeah. Well, I went in 1986 because I'm an old, you know what, and so it was before the fall of the Soviet Union, and
I went in
so I went on
2015.
so like nearly 20 years after I went. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went 19 years before you went, it was still communist.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a funny story here. And basically, I'm going to give away the punchline. My brother's an asshole. Okay. So me and my brother went on this school trip, which was a school that neither of us went to, but it was a very unpopular school trip. So they opened it out to other schools. My brother wasn't even at school anymore. He was just like, yeah, I'll go. And so we went on this very, very deeply unpopular school trip to St. Petersburg, Moscow,
Mm-hmm.
and another town. I can't remember what town. And it was all traveling around by rail and shit in the Soviet Union.
Hmm.
And when we were in this other town that wasn't Moscow or St. Petersburg, we were like, oh, God. Because obviously we got drunk every night.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 15 and he was 18. But we were in Russia. We got drunk every night. And we were on this coach trip to this rural town. I mean, it's all bullshit, governments stink, don't they? And which was basically just to take us out into countryside and prove to us that there are no lines for food. So we went into this store, and honestly, pretty cool place. It was this big kind of room with old-fashioned dark wood counters all around, and all the goods were on the shelf behind the counter. And there's like ladder, like in the library, there are these ladders going
Mm-hmm.
up to the goods. And of course, me and my brother don't have a lick of Russian, so we go in there, and now we just, when you're so thirsty, the only thing you can think about is, I want a drink of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally all that was on our mind. And yet there was a bit of a line. Stood in the line. Because we're English, we're polite, we're good at that. That's the one thing we're good at. Stood in the line, got to the big fat babushka who's serving the whatever it is you want. She was, and we pointed at this bottle with a clear liquid in it. My brother did. Pointed at this bottle with a clear liquid in it. She goes, okay. She shins up the ladder, gets the bottle, brings it back down, puts it on the thing. So many kopecks, whatever it is. I pay for it. He snatches it out of my hand. Bastard that he is. Rips the top off it. He goes, it was spirit vinegar. I was like, yeah, you're a wanker.
That's funny. That's pretty cool. You got to see it when it was like real
Yeah.
communist.
I got salmonella. That was my keepsake.
That's one thing. Like if I'm ever afforded the opportunity to go back, the one thing I'm gonna take with me is a lot of money, because I was not prepared for how many of the Soviet antiques that they were just selling them to sue.
Oh yeah, we came back with loads of like Soviet iconography.
Oh yeah, but
sure.
I mean, still today, the stuff that they were selling to the tourists, like they were like calling me back to show me like all these Soviet military things. In fact,
Did you try those cigarettes that are like a tampon?
No,
it's like
I didn't.
A big long paper tube with like a plug of pipe tobacco at the end of it. You not see those?
I did see them. I didn't try them.
Yeah. Oh well, we tried them, but little did we know. Dear listener, if you ever try this, if you ever see these Russian cigarettes, like that much of it is tampon applicator, and then that much of it is black juicy tobacco. Do not just smoke it like a normal cigarette, because if you do, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take the tampon applicator and pinch it like that, and then pinch it like that. So it's like got a little blockage in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The idea of it, it's like a cigarette holder, like a posh English woman would have.
Okay.
It's so you don't waste any tobacco. So you can smoke all the tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't pinch the tube, the last bit of molten tobacco flies down the tube at 100 miles an hour right into your larynx, which is not a pleasant experience.
So, the only memorable story I got from my time in Russia, I like to occasionally have a cigar. So, I'm American. We can't get Cuban cigars here, so I went and got a couple Cuban cigars, and I was like, you know what? I'm in Moscow. I'm gonna go down. There's a bar down the street. I'm gonna go have some vodka, and I was right there, like just outside of the Red Square. And so I go to this very popular, very posh bar, and I'm sitting there, and I can't speak any English, so I've got a translator app that I'm using, and everyone's interested. They're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm communicating, saying I'm from America, and this one guy comes down. He could speak broken English because he could also speak Italian, and we found using my app and through what he could say. And, I'm an American in California, so I picked up some Spanish phrases, and that's not too far from Italian. So we were able to communicate pretty well. And he's like, outside, smoke. I'm like, okay. So we're outside. He's smoking cigarettes. Very stereotypical Russian. He's just puffing, chain smoking them down. And we're sitting there and we're having drinks and we're, laughing and finding ways to communicate. Well, all of a sudden this woman rides up on a horse and she starts speaking to me, and I'm saying to her po angielski, which is speak English, and he starts explaining to her that I'm an American, I only know English, And she's telling him, and he's like, clearly wants me to know something. And he looks at me, he's like, she wants you ride horse. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to ride on a horse. I was like, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And he tells her, and she gets mad and just starts screaming at him. And he's like, dot, dot, dot. And he looks at me, he's like, she really give you good ride. I'm like, I'm okay. I don't need a ride on a horse. So he tells her, and at this point now they're just screaming back and forth in a public city street, just screaming top of their lungs.
Russians rule, dude.
Right, and everyone else is like, yeah, walking by like this is normal, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like the only place in the U.S. I could see this would be like New York City, right? So he's like, he finally looks at me. He's like, do you want to ride on the horse? Yes or no? And I'm like, no. And he's like, no. And he's like, telling her to F off and whatnot. So she starts going away, and he's like, stupid prostitute. And then it hits me. So I get in my little translator app. I'm like, are you calling her a whore, or are you saying she's an actual prostitute? And he looks at it, he's like, da, da. And he like types back. And what he types at me is, you pay for the ride on the horse, and then they take you to the brothel where you've already paid because you paid for the ride on the horse. I'm like, oh my God. And she was that.
You fucked up, dude.
What's funny is, I've been to multiple countries. I've been to, you have to go, when you travel, you got to go see the red light district just to see it. So you can normally pick out who the prostitutes are. This girl she was in like, she was wearing jeans and like what do I say, like a flannel shirt, like did not look like a prostitute. I literally thought she was offering me a ride on the horse. Here it was a totally different ride she was offering.
Well, that reminds me of a story, another Eastern European story. My brother, who, although I just shit on him just now for stealing my vinegar, he is an asshole, but he does business in the Czech Republic a lot. Okay, which was recently part of the Soviet sphere of influence, and I mean, I won't comment on its future, but fingers crossed. And he goes over there a lot, and he had to go to he took some clients out for the evening, and it was a mixture of him, a load of Czech guys, and one Chinese guy. And probably in Brno or some Czech sort of medium-sized city. And they went to a titty bar, which is it's definitely not my scene, and it's certainly not my big brother's scene. He hates that kind of shit, right? But he was the host, and they all wanted to go, so they went. And so they're all sitting around in a titty bar. And this is why we don't like titty bars, is these ladies come up to you and pester you. They annoy you. They go, do you want a drink? Like, so this lady comes up to my brother in his role as host in this party that he wouldn't go in there for a gold pig, given to himself, but he's got to go there because his guests want to go there. So there he is, this young lady in lingerie comes up to him and starts trying to sit on his knee, and you know what they do in titty bars, and he says, oh yeah, I just took my raincoat off. I stood up and took my raincoat off and drapes it around her shoulders and says, cover yourself up. That's so based. That's like being in a titty bar is not based. It's the opposite of based, but like giving the stripper your raincoat is so based.
Oh, that's yeah. It's funny because yeah, we don't really. Other than I live just a couple hours from Las Vegas, so I go up to Las Vegas a couple times a
Not
year.
Vegas.
That's like the only place in America that really has like an acceptable red light district type thing. Um,
Whoring culture.
but then again, the whole it's Sin City, so like the whole of Vegas is just gonna be nothing but drunken debauchery. So
Yeah, I've been to Vegas, but I went with my then wife,
oh.
so no whoring.
That's yeah. Uh, it's fun. Vegas is a fun city. I get a lot of my friends from the East Coast who want to come out here, and I'm like, okay, here's the things you should do and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, so you can have a good time. Um, you don't have to take take it. You don't have to gamble. You don't have to go to a strip club.
No, you
You don't
don't.
have to do that stuff.
I didn't gamble a cent when I was there
Yeah,
because I come from a country where you've always been allowed to gamble as much as you want on whatever you like. So it's no novelty. The novelty is I don't know, like the fanciness, and
I always tell
I don't even know
people
why I went.
if you're going to Vegas, have yourself at least do one really nice meal and one show, and then you'll enjoy all your time there. Um, and also, don't come in August because it's just way too hot. But yeah, it's funny because you know Americans get very uptight about certain things, and then you get into these other countries where it's like, oh yeah, that's just normal and acceptable. Like I'm the type again, I love the chaos, so I'm just like, oh my god, what's going on with this? I gotta find it. I have to
Yeah,
learn
but
everything about it.
look, there is that. Don't be too sort of sanguine about the straight lacedness of most of America because you America's never been conquered. Like in Germany, they have like roadside whorehouses, and like imagine yourself a dad, and the girls who work in. Let's say that there isn't human trafficking going on. Okay, let's say we live in an ideal world where women aren't being kidnapped from Romania and shipped all around Europe. So the best case scenario is that some dad whose daughter didn't do very well at school ends up having to suck guys off in this roadside whorehouse in a small town in Germany. Like, why is that happening? Well, I'll tell you why it's happening. It's because they got beaten in a war. They're conquered. That's why the Japanese invented bukkake porn because they got beaten in a war. All this stuff is what happens when you get vanquished. Now,
I'm I'm
lots of
only
people's daughters are in California getting jizzed on right now because America got vanquished. I can't say by who.
how we did to ourselves. I'm laughing because one of my very good friends that I met overseas, she's uh, lives in the UK. I've actually been to outside of Birmingham to visit her, um, and I'm a single guy, and she's always like, "Okay, who are you dating? Are you talking to any birds or anything?" And we'll talk about it, and
Yes.
she's like, you know what the problem is? You keep dating American women. You just need to stop because they don't know how good they have it. She was like, go find you a girl from an oppressed country, bring her to America, and she will be like, oh my God, I'm never going to go back home again.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, as an English guy, you go to America, like, I've been a few times, and you sort of feel like an honored guest. Like, I always have done because like I do. I act like an asshole, and people think it's funny and whatever. And like I've always felt really, really welcome in America. But I've only ever got laid once in America, and that was by a fat English girl.
You, what's funny is I had this meme somewhere. I'll have to look it up, and if I find it, I'll post it in the video. But it's how Americans look at the British, and it's all these gentlemen in three-piece suits standing around in a really nice, conference room, right? It says how the rest of the world sees the British, and here's a dude face down. It's got to be
Yeah.
in like Ibiza or somewhere where he's been partying all night, face down in the street, just drunk as shit.
Like, literally everybody in England has inhaled their own vomit.
But
Every
that's
single person.
what gets me about that is so true. Because uh,
Yeah, but
everywhere.
like, so we have this like this kind of blue collar culture, which they are trying to kill.
Mhm.
Our blue collar culture is you work, you're sober when you're at work, but on the weekends and the evenings, you get fucking shit faced. That's it. That's why you work. Otherwise, what's the point? That's why I'm drunk now. It's my day off.
I you know I grew up I grew up south of Detroit in Ohio, like right there where Lake Erie and
Yeah.
Ohio, Michigan all come
Like
together.
PJ,
Like who?
PJ O'Rourke. He's from
Oh, I didn't know that.
he's from
But
Ohio, and he died just over a year ago.
yeah, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, but I was in a very blue collar neighborhood,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's now I'm over here in California, and there's blue collar neighborhoods, but it's so different. Like there, people just don't care. It's not a. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm working, you're working. We're not going to try to one up one another,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But here in Southern California, everyone has to like try to out unique everybody. And I live right next to Joshua Tree National
Yeah.
Park, so I get a lot of
Sweet,
uh,
dude.
I get a lot of world travelers who come here, and like
Oh,
they're
dude, I'm totally coming to your house next year.
oh
After they drop that no vax shit, I can't
everyone
go to America now.
everyone comes here to camp, and the biggest group is Germans. I run into Germans all the time at my little corner store when I go up there to get some beer or something. And but what's funny is like they're just here to experience the land and everything, but the other people out here, like we're getting LA people that are moving out here, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy this 5 acres of land out here, and I'm gonna live in like a small little hut because I don't care about things. And it's like, but don't you have a $500,000 home back in LA?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do care about things. So
Yeah.
it's funny,
I
like
mean, what's a $500,000 home in LA right now? Though it's either like a 2 bedroom apartment in I don't know wherever the whats live, or
it.
it's a 1 car garage in
it
wherever the cool people live.
Oh, they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm living above a garage, but I'm
Yeah.
a block away from the beach," and they're saying that like it's impressive. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, you live in the roof of someone's garage, and you can't even park out in front. You got to park 3 blocks away.
Yeah, dude.
So yeah, it's really funny, but yeah, whenever I'm traveling overseas, like I find like you were saying, the blue collar mindset when you get into areas and whatnot where there's people who've been farmers or workers their whole life,
Dude.
it's just they're just very
Dude,
even keeled.
yeah, listen, like I think we're probably pretty close to wrapping up, mainly because I really need a piss.
Sure.
But there's whatever system you're living in, wherever there is such a thing as state power, they're going to try and divide and rule, or divide and conquer, as you Americans call it. We in England call it divide and rule because we used to run the whole fucking world. You guys run the whole world now. For some reason, you call it divide and conquer. The working class, blue collar Russian, blue collar Iranian, blue collar English, blue collar Scottish, blue collar, I don't know, Brazilian, whatever. We're all the same people, dude. We're the same people in all the militaries. Like, you join the military, you start fucking sniping some cunt. He's more like you than the guy than your fucking officer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that.
Like, they're talking about globalism. Okay, the real globalism is the global working class, the global blue collar guys. What the fuck have we got against any blue collar guy from any country in the world, dude?
And
what's the problem?
Is just a new colonialism. It's the same thing.
Yeah, but it's like financial globalism instead of spiritual globalism. Like, the true globalism is this guy working in a I don't know, stapler factory in Nigeria. It's the same guy as me. I'm a truck driver in England. Same guy as you. You're a military veteran in California. There's a guy in fucking Siberia who is a military veteran, and there's another guy who's a truck driver. Like, we're the same guy.
Yep.
And like, I'm a fucking extremely right wing anarchist. Okay, right. But you got to admit that if you don't accept the class delineation between people, okay, so I'm kind of Marxist in that way, even though I'm as far right wing as you can possibly get. Like, it's class. That's what matters. Don't matter if you're Nigerian, Indian, Pakistani, American, English. That don't matter. What matters is, are you a truck driver or are you a banker? I'm a fucking truck driver, right? And if all those truck drivers stick together, it don't matter about China and America and Russia. And, that's bullshit. The fucking blokes that do the work, let's all stick together. Let's make them pay. I sound like a fucking communist there, but that is how it is, dude.
I mean, yeah, there's absolutely truth in that. There's also truth in, the pendulum's always going to swing, and that's the people.
Yes, maybe. I hope so.
Oh, I believe it. It absolutely is, because again, it comes back to what we were talking about: free speech and censorship. People will always find a way to slap that poster on the wall.
Yeah, true.
So it
ain't going to be a college professor or a fucking banker that does it. It's going to be some prick like you and me.
When it all collapses,
we're always the people who have to. Our blood has to fill the gutters. I read loads of 19th century literature, and like they parody my favorite author's P.G. Wodehouse, and he kind of parodies everything. He doesn't really take anything seriously. It's great. It's the best. Honestly, read anything by P.G. Wodehouse. It's the funniest shit. It's great. But if you he used to parody, the Park Lane he used to have characters who would say Park Lane, which is the
Hmm.
road from Buckingham Palace down to the centre of London, is going to run with the blood. The gutters of Park Lane are going to run with the blood of the aristocracy. Yeah, that's not going to happen, dude. But like the aristocracy's fucked unless you bring them their dinner.
Yeah, yeah. That's when it does collapse. We're the guys that they're going to come to survive.
Yeah, and we keep doing it, dude.
Mm.
Fuck them. I mean, like, I, I, I literally can't have a YouTube channel because I'm so right wing. I think I can't really honestly say I'm racist, but I find racism funny. I think whatever. But
I find it funny
but
even when people are being racist to me. I find it hilarious. Yeah.
I'm English. I'm used to being called a you know what for just because of how I was born. Like, and be blamed for what my government did. Like, like, listen. Okay, I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna leave your listeners, who respect to them. And Skipper, I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
But I'm gonna say this: your government is your worst enemy. Doesn't matter if you're Russian, English, American, Iranian, whatever, wherever you're from, right? Who has done, who's taken more money from you? Who's called you a racist? Who's called you a homophobe? Who's called you this, that, or the other? Who are you scared of? It's your government.
No, absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what country you're from, your government is the enemy. Leave them alone. Don't have anything, don't give them legitimacy by getting involved. And remember, don't hate anybody except them. That's my message. T.me/historyhomos chat and rockfin.com/historyhomos. Check out History Homos podcast. We do that, all this kind of crap I've been on about, it's on there. Enjoy.
William, it was definitely great talking to you. Hope to do it again. And yeah, everyone who's watching this, uh, absolutely check out their show. They're quite funny, as you can tell. Well, thank you for joining us, and I'll end the way I normally end my show. For all the viewers out there, thank you for being worth serving.
Okay, Skipper, hang
Yep.
on after you finish recording. I'm half